No, I'm not. It's just that I like you and I missed you, bro. Like, that shit at the beginning of summer had me scared as fuck.
Yeah, you and everybody else.
I'm serious, Rue. I've seen a lot of people die. None like you. Nah, I don't know what type of fucked up shit you got going inside your head. And I don't know how to help. But I could tell you one thing. This drug shit, it's not the answer.
2 months before he died in July 2023, Angus Cloud, the beloved actor who unexpectedly found fame as the kind-hearted yet streetwise Fezco on the wildly popular HBO series Euphoria, opposite Zendaya, Sydney Sweeney, and Jacob Elordi, among others, traveled to Ireland to attend his father's funeral. Angus and his father had been extremely close, and his death after a very short battle with cancer at just 65 years old struck the young actor hard. Cloud had described his father as his closest friend and mentor, and a steady force of love and support during a sometimes difficult and tumultuous life. In the weeks after his father's death, Angus withdrew. After he and his family returned from Ireland and mourned together in Angus's childhood home in Oakland, Angus holed up in his bedroom for days at a time. He told his sister he was suffering from waves of sadness and isolation that he was finding harder and harder to manage. His only public acknowledgement of his sadness came on July 14th, when he posted a touching image of his smiling father in a red hoodie and sweats, with the simple caption, "Miss you, bro." In an attempt to deal with the intense pain, Angus began self-medicating. He turned to a combination of narcotics, including cocaine, opioids, meth, and benzodiazepines, as he sought an escape from a malaise he couldn't shake. Even before he lost his father, Cloud had struggled with drug addiction and often spoke openly about his mental health challenges. Growing up in Oakland, he faced a turbulent environment that exposed him to drugs and other risks from a very young age. Friends and family described him as someone who, even as a young child, had a heaviness about him. Angus's difficulties only mounted after he found fame when Euphoria debuted in 2019, exacerbated by the pressures and scrutiny of the entertainment industry. As Euphoria became a cultural phenomenon, Angus was expected to attend press conferences, red carpet appearances, and interviews. When confronted by paparazzi, he was nervous and his speech stilted, though he was always able to maintain a smile and remain kind. He went from being an unknown face to a breakout star almost overnight, something for which the notoriously private Cloud was ill-prepared. During interviews, he was frequently asked personal questions about his past, including his struggles and substance use, and it was clear that the probing into his private life took a toll. These newfound challenges, coupled with the loss of his father, made it difficult for him to manage his mental health, leaving him vulnerable to self-destructive coping mechanisms. And so, on the afternoon of July 31st, 2023, Angus retreated to his bedroom, where he sought to again isolate himself from the world. He snorted his drug cocktail of choice, fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine. There is nothing to indicate that Angus was trying to take his own life that afternoon, but the quantity of drugs he consumed on top of the damage he had already done to his body over the prior weeks of continuous drug use were too much for his body to endure. A short time later, Angus's mother entered his bedroom to check on her son and found him lifeless in bed. She called paramedics who came immediately, but he was dead by the time they arrived. Angus Cloud was 25 years old. I'm Jason Beckerman.
I'm Derek Kaufman.
This is Last Days, Angus Cloud.
Among the Euphoria cast, which, thanks to the show's success, is a who's who of Hollywood's most famous 20-somethings, Angus Cloud's closest friend was Maud Apatow. Apatow played Lexi Howard, the thoughtful counterpart to her conniving sister played by Sydney Sweeney, who shared a deep bond with Cloud's Fezco character. The on-screen chemistry between Lexi and Fezco was a reflection of the two actors' genuine friendship off-screen. Apatow often spoke about how comfortable she felt around Angus, and he reciprocated those feelings in interviews, expressing admiration for her kindness and talent. Cloud's death devastated Maud. She posted on Instagram, quote, "Angus was the kindest soul. I still can't believe this is real. He was one of my best friends and made every moment on set special just by being himself. I'll cherish our memories forever. He had such a big heart." She concluded her post with, quote, "I wish you could have seen how loved he was by everyone who knew him." Each of the other cast members issued similarly heartfelt tributes, reflecting on Cloud's authenticity and kindness. Zendaya wrote, quote, "Words are not enough to describe the infinite beauty that is Angus. I'm so grateful I got the chance to know him, to call him a brother, to see his warm, kind eyes and bright smile, or hear his infectious laugh. He was a special soul, and his kindness left an imprint on everyone around him." And then Zendaya echoed the closing notes of Apatow's tribute, saying, quote, "I hope he knows how much we loved him." You know, you can't help but read into these kind of statements. They both closed with the line, "I hope Angus knew that we loved him." So there seemed to be among the cast sort of this doubt that he actually ever internalized how much he was loved. And that is just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it suggests a guy who was difficult to get through, who, he had these addictions. He suffered from real bouts of depression for many, many years throughout his entire life, I think. And you're just seeing a guy who lacks self-esteem, who's expressing that he was unaware of how loved he was by the others, who genuinely, I mean, it's hard to sometimes read into post-death tributes because people say the nicest things, but there was obviously a tremendous bond between these people on set, and he was first among them.
I go back to your statement at the top where you said there was a real heaviness about him. We all have people like this in our life who, when you say, "You're wonderful," they go, yeah, I know. And they're sort of uncomfortable with any praise because they're so tough on themselves, or they see themselves so negatively, and they can't break out of that shell to even sort of accept love. And it sounds like Angus really struggled with this, notwithstanding that everyone loved him and he had a lot of success.
It's interesting because we'll talk about it a little bit more, but he was not an actor. He was cast in this role as his first acting gig, and he's put up against, Zendaya is already very famous by this point, but he's dealing with people, Jacob Elordi, Sydney Sweeney, and others who are classically trained, who have been to the acting coaches, been to the acting schools, have done things as kids. These are real actors. There's a scene, early on, I think it's in season 2, between him and Jacob Elordi. It's a great scene. It's really famous in the show. I was a huge fan of the show. And Elordi's a trained thespian, does Shakespeare, does Beckett on stage, the whole thing. And they have this battle where they've been enemies, and then they're at a party, and it appears that they're bonding together. And Angus Cloud is acting next to Jacob Elordi, who, Jacob Elordi's going to win Academy Awards in a couple of years. He's a really big deal and a great actor. And Angus Cloud is toe-to-toe with him acting, and it's a hard scene, close-ups on the face, the whole thing. And it's great. Now, the scene ends with Fezco hitting Jacob Elordi's character over the head with a bottle, and a fight breaks out. But nevertheless, it's a really great scene. It was a very moving scene. It was a very famous scene. And it really showed that Angus Cloud, although no real acting chops,
was a natural.
It was a natural, but you got to think that he didn't feel that, right? You got to think that some of this part of we never knew how much we loved him is based on the fact he kind of maybe felt a little bit of fish out of water.
Yeah, a lot of self-doubt when you're around very famous. Zendaya, as you said, was already famous. Elordi was classically trained. You feel like a fish out of water, and you don't trust your own instincts and your own talent. But when you watch it as a consumer of that show, he had it. He had it in spades.
He was just a dude they found on the street, and he looked the part of the Fezco character, and it's really amazing. Indeed, Cloud's acting story was anything but ordinary. He had moved to Brooklyn at 18 with no intention of becoming an actor. Fresh out of high school in Oakland, Angus came to New York with nothing but a few $100s and a vague plan to experience life outside of his hometown. He wasn't chasing fame or a career on screen. He was just looking for a fresh start. For a year, he lived a modest life in Brooklyn, working at a restaurant to make ends meet while soaking in the energy of the city. He wasn't enrolled in acting classes, didn't have headshots, and he never even attended an audition. He spent his free time hanging out with friends, skating around the neighborhood, and exploring the city's underground music and art scenes. He was just another young, creative soul drifting through the vibrant, chaotic landscape in New York City with no clear path forward, like so many other people who are young and go to New York.
But then something really extraordinary happened that wouldn't be believed if it wasn't true. A casting agent by the name of Jennifer Venditti, who had recently been hired to scout fresh faces for a new HBO series called Euphoria, saw Cloud walking down the street in Manhattan and stopped him. She told him he had a distinctive look, sharp features, a shaved head, and piercing eyes, and asked him if he'd be interested in auditioning. Angus thought it was a scam. He's in New York, a lot of people out to sort of get you and take advantage of you. And he said he wasn't an actor and he had no interest in becoming one. But Venditti was persistent, and Cloud relented, agreeing with her that he had nothing to lose. The audition tape, which is really just a 6-minute casual chat between Venditti and Cloud, is awkward. Venditti is trying to get him to relax and just be himself, but Angus is so inexperienced at this point and nervous that he has trouble mustering cohesive sentences.
My name's Angus Cloud, and I'm from Oakland, California, Oakland, USA, you get what I'm saying? And now I'm out here in Brooklyn, and just out here doing my thing, you know what I'm saying?
How old are you?
I'm 19.
But the raw, untrained talent shone through, and Euphoria's producers hired him based on the interview alone. The show's creator, Sam Levinson, said that in addition to his distinctive look, Angus had an obvious and natural authenticity and vulnerability that would be perfect to the character of Fezco, the small-time drug dealer with a heart of gold. According to Levinson, it never seemed that Angus was playing a role, perhaps because he was drawing from his own life experiences, his upbringing in Oakland, and the people he had known. Levinson said he saw something in Angus that he described as, quote, a realness that perfectly embodied the world of Euphoria.
Once filming started, his chemistry with co-stars like Zendaya and Maude Apatow gave him the presence of a seasoned actor. Audiences love Fezco, drawn to his offbeat and deeply relatable personality. In fact, if you look at those ridiculous online polls and rankings, the most popular Euphoria character by far is Fezco. He's number one every single time. These are hardly scientific studies, of course, but when you're first every time, it tells you all you need to know. Levinson explained his appeal by saying that Cloud didn't just play Fezco, but was Fezco in a way that brought new depths to the character. Quote, Angus just gets it, Levinson would say. He understands the human side of the character in a way that's raw and honest. When Angus landed the role of Fezco, his story became the stuff of legend. He went from bussing tables in Brooklyn to starring in one of the most talked about TV shows of the decade, seemingly overnight. It's a story that millions of aspiring young dreamers talk about, but then purge from their thoughts because it's too impossible. It's a slumdog millionaire story that happened in real life. It's as impossible as winning the lottery. Yet despite the newfound fame, or because of the odd route it takes to get him there, Angus never stopped being the same unassuming, down-to-earth guy he'd always been, often laughing at the absurdity of his own journey and refusing to let success change who he was. He was so authentic, this unexpected path. This is exactly what endeared him to so many fans, Derek. He was so raw and unassuming. He played a drug dealer with a heart, as we talked about. And when you watch the show, you can't help but buy it. He's the one pure character in this fictional world that is just full of liars and cheaters and manipulators. But Fezco, although he's a drug dealer and he's dealing to kids and, an awful guy in that respect, he is honest and authentic, and that's reflected by Angus Cloud and his journey. It's reflected in the character, and that's when Sam Levinson was saying that he wasn't just playing Fezco, he was Fezco in so many ways.
But that's troubling in another sense, because
exactly
the
right.
show Euphoria is a hard show to watch. It's dystopian. Yeah. It's a view of sort of young people growing up. There's lots of rampant sex. There's drug use. It's not a show for the faint of heart. And yes, his true spirit and his authenticity and his sweetness shone through that character, but he's in a hard-boiled world. And he's so good at it, you can sort of tell, because he's not a trained actor, because he kind of lived in that world in a very real way before he was on a show. So it's impossible to watch Euphoria and separate Angus Cloud's real life from sort of the fiction that you're watching, and parts of that real life are troubling.
Yeah, it's the great device the show used. They have this kid, Angus Cloud's character Fezco, who grew up embroiled in the drug wars and poor and the whole thing, and he is the spoke on a wheel, and the spokes lead out to all these rich, spoiled kids who are just the worst of the worst, and they're users and abusers. And the moral center of the entire show, the only person with any morality in the entire show, is the drug dealer at the heart of it all.
It's crazy to pull it off. That's why it's a great show.
One of the great scenes from Euphoria, and it sort of exemplifies exactly what we're talking about, involved Cloud and Zendaya's character named Rue. He's a drug dealer and she's a strung-out addict who comes to him begging for a fix, but they've been friends since childhood and he cares too much about her to let her kill herself, so he turns her away. It is absolutely heart-wrenching.
Not today, Rue. Sorry.
Come on, man, don't be a dick.
Nah, I'm serious. Can't come in.
Look, man, all I need is just like a few OCs. That's all.
Sorry, I can't help
Fez, I've had a really fucked up day, all right? Like, it's been a really, really fucked up day, okay? So I need you to open the door for me, okay? Can you open the door, please?
I'm not gonna help you kill yourself, Rue. I'm sorry, but you can't be coming over here no more. Just go home.
Fez, don't close the fuck! Are you doing this because you care about me? If you gave a shit about me, you wouldn't have sold me the fucking drugs in the first place! But you did! You fucking did! So open the goddamn door! You did this to me! You did this to me, Fez.
And by the time Euphoria's second season wrapped, Cloud's star was shining nearly as bright as his bigger-named co-stars. He had received dozens of offers for feature film roles and completed 2 projects, including the acclaimed indie film Your Lucky Day, and he had just signed on for a big-budget action thriller with Universal Pictures. Angus Cloud was truly about to become an A-list star. But off-camera, Cloud's struggles were quietly becoming more pronounced. Friends and close colleagues noted how much Cloud had changed in the wake of his success. While he was still the same down-to-earth guy they had come to know, there was a sense of emotional distance that hadn't been there before. He'd become more withdrawn, and the joy that once came from creating art and connecting with fans started to feel overshadowed by stress and anxiety. He began to bristle at reporters' questions about the similarities between Cloud and his characters, and he found himself in a position where he had to carefully navigate questions about his real-life experiences and their connection to his on-screen roles, all of which were down-on-their-luck addicts with mental health woes. This blurred line between his roles and his reality became a source of pressure, as fans often conflated the two, expecting Angus to embody the same persona in real life. His personal life, which had always been a private sanctuary for him, was increasingly scrutinized by the media, adding to the pressure he felt to maintain a certain image. Despite achieving a level of success that millions of aspiring actors would kill for, Cloud was being crushed under the weight of these expectations. Here's Cloud talking about the overwhelming sadness that hung over him despite his success.
I just feel like everything going on in the world, like, you're gonna go click on my page and go just see me smiling and happy and living my life, you know what I'm saying? Like everything's good. Yeah. Everything is not good. Everything's pretty bad, you know what I'm saying? Like, my life personally, I'm maintaining, you know what I'm saying? But generally, this shit is fucked up.
That video is really hard to watch. He sounds and looks wasted, and the thoughts he's expressing are profoundly sad and hopeless. In the waning months of his life, both before his father's death and certainly after, Cloud used drugs heavily as he battled depression and feelings of isolation. Despite his close relationships with his Euphoria co-stars, including Zendaya and Maud Apatow, who tried to offer their support, the growing weight of his responsibilities as a rising star left him feeling disconnected from the world he had known before fame. His closest friends and family noticed a change in his demeanor, as the pressures of balancing work, public expectations, and his personal life became overwhelming.
You know, Jason, what's hardest about that video to watch for me is how young he is. Yeah. This is a 25-year-old kid who all of a sudden has all the success in the world and lacks the coping mechanisms to deal with what that success does. I think a lot about his friendship with Maud Apatow. Maud Apatow is the very famous daughter of Judd Apatow. Right. She was born into this system. The
exact opposite of Angus Cloud.
You couldn't design someone more distinct than those two finding common ground to be friends, because she knows how to deal with it. It's been her entire life. And she's had, by all accounts, Judd Apatow and his wife raise these kids to understand
full support
how
structure.
Crazy this world is.
They understand this world. They understand how to manipulate it and deal with it. You can always fall back on, I mean, not that she did. She's very accomplished in her own right, but you can always fall back on him to, you know, you're not at the risk of the next project failing and therefore you're out of work forever.
Yes.
You know, she didn't have any of the same pressures that he had. She has her own pressures. Everybody's got
absolutely,
their own
but she could stay grounded in her family life and separate what she was doing on Euphoria. Didn't have the same pressures as him, and it's heartbreaking.
I think it's really important to say there's not a lot known about Angus Cloud's early life, but he had a really good set of parents who loved him dearly. They lived in a very tight-knit Irish immigrant household that had moved to Oakland. His father, the reason he died in Ireland, the reason Angus was back there was because his father went home basically to convalesce among his more extended family and probably die there. You know, probably knew that was going to happen. But anyway, that's why he's in Ireland. But very, very tight-knit family. And we heard at the top how much he loved his father and bonded with his father. This wasn't a lack of family. This wasn't a lack of family. It wasn't an issue of sort of being disconnected from his family. He was very much connected with them right up until the end. But he just suffered from these woes that he couldn't shake.
So we don't do this often anymore, but particularly when I'm struck by someone who's so young who passes away, you want to engage in a little bit of a counterfactual. If he hadn't died that night, if he hadn't been so overwhelmed and unable to sort of see his way through this early success and the self-doubt and so forth, what do you think becomes of his career? Because in one sense, I want to say he had such natural talent within him that he would have been able to sail through and become an A-lister and really get it all under control and have a happy life. The other part of me is what made him great, and that authenticity also was one of his demons, and that it would have been hard to overcome throughout his life.
You know, he did that movie, Your Lucky Day. I saw some of it last night. It's really, really good, and he's good in it, but he's playing the same character, and he plays the same character over and over again, and his speech pattern, the way that he looks and acts, it lends itself to a certain type of role. Sure. And I don't think, so it's hard to see that he was going to really branch out and be a long-term sort of A-lister.
And he had a look, such a distinctive look, so he was going to be typecast in those types of roles.
This enormous scar on the side of his head from a childhood accident. It would just, you know,
certain roles, a lot of character.
Certain roles he's going to get and certain roles he's not. But at least in the short term, he had this offer to do a big time, we don't know what it was, but a big time movie with Universal, an action film, a big budget film. He's going to have a run in front of him of 5 or 10 years where he could have been enormous. Now, all of that assumes not just that he doesn't die that night, but he pulls himself together because he was suffering greatly. And I don't know, there was nothing out there. I looked to see if he was seeking mental health, help with his mental health, seeking to get out from under the addiction.
It's hard.
Maybe he doesn't get there ever.
Yeah, it's hard not to think. When I think of Angus Cloud, I think of 2 other people. I think of Amy Winehouse and I think of Mac Miller, which are these 2 monumental talents, right? And their greatness was inextricably intertwined with the demons that they battled, right? Like Amy Winehouse, her defiance about going to rehab is her identity, and that's how people knew her. Mac Miller, the same way. They try to fit into that role that the world saw them and then made them successful. And I worried that Angus Cloud was going to have to contend with that his whole life.
The irony there, of course, is that he was about to be cast. There's all these rumors he's going to be cast in the biopic for Mac Miller, and they actually look a tremendous amount alike.
Yes, which is just explodes your head. It sort of folds in off itself.
Angus Cloud's life was marked by a rare authenticity, a raw openness that made him beloved by those who knew him and admired by millions who only saw him on screen. Despite the pressures of fame and the battles he faced privately, Angus stayed connected to his roots and embraced his unplanned journey into acting with a humility that resonated deeply. In his final months, he spoke candidly about the challenges he faced, never shying away from discussing the emotional toll of sudden stardom. His vulnerability, both on and off screen, was part of what made him so relatable. He wasn't just a rising star, he was a young man still finding his way. Despite the struggles that came with Euphoria's success, Angus was always proud of the show and felt deeply connected to his castmates. He called them his family and remarked on the closeness of the group. "The cast," he said, "they're like my family, for real. I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to do this with." The feeling was mutual, and the outpouring of love when he died spoke to the bond they all had. And when he did die, his Euphoria family issued a joint statement, remarking on the uniquely kind and talented person Angus Cloud was. They said, quote, "We are heartbroken by the loss of our dear friend and brother Angus Cloud. He brought a light and energy to the set that was unmatched, a unique blend of warmth, humor, and sincerity that made everyone around him feel seen and valued. Angus had a gift for making the most ordinary moments extraordinary. He touched our lives in ways words cannot fully capture. We will forever remember his kindness, his laughter, and the love he gave so freely. The world has lost a truly special soul, but his spirit will live on in our hearts and in the stories he helped tell. Thank you, Angus, for your memories, the joy, and the laughter. We love you and miss you dearly."